Hello everybody, welcome. Hello Rudy Boyo. How are you all doing today? So we are going to continue with the Endgame series, which we started a few days back, and we are going to see more upon Endgames today. So let's start. Let's begin. Good, and you? I'm also in a good mood. So looking forward to study Endgames. Hello Jim Splendour. Go, 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 go. Yes. So the first position, we are already on lead chess. First as Steinitz. No, you are Lasker. Rudy boy Steinitz. So white king h4, pawn b6, black king b1, and pawn b7. White to play. Thank you for following. And welcome everybody. I am new to chess. Okay, so it's good thing to start with endgames to improve. Now this is a white to play and draw. Black king will go to take the pawn on b6. So the logic is that when black takes the pawn on b6, our king should reach b4 square and take a position. That would be a draw. Okay, so if we try to go straight forward like this, let's say king g4, and black will stop us from that path. And if we go king d6, king b5, the pawn is attacked, king c7, king a6, and we lose the pawn. So we can't go to capture that pawn on b7. So we have to try to reach b4 square and make a draw in this position. So sometimes straightforward way is not the way to go. And I'm thinking maybe we can go like this. It's a long way, but can be an idea in this position. So let's try king g3, king c2, king f2. Thank you, Opfershach. Welcome. Hello, chess to go. Everybody's joining. Nice to see you all. King d3, king e1. So king c4, king d2, king b5. Thank you and welcome. King c3, king b6, and king b4. So this looks like the answer to me. If we try to go straight away, the king will stop us, and it is called as shouldering, like we saw yesterday. So long way is the right way here. Let me check. This is composition by Grigoriev in 1931. And yes, first move is king g3. Thank you for the donation, Badur. Appreciate it so much. King c2, king f2, king d3, and king e1. Yes, this is the answer as we just saw. King c4, king d2, And when the king takes the pawn, we take the opposition. And this is the draw that we studied, because black does not have a move to give up. If the same position was moved one square ahead, let's say the king was on b5 and white king was on b3, black can have a waiting move with the pawn b6, and then black can win that position. Next one. Yes, interesting. Here both white king on e5, pawn b5, black king on h5, pawn on f7 and b6. Thank you for the follow, Brent. So this they have said is white to play and draw. So we are studying from the Dovretzky's Endgame book. If we go for the b6 pawn with king d6, black plays f5, king c6, and black promotes first. e6, queens. And this is a knight's pawn, so black will be winning this position with the pattern that we saw. This check, king moves, and every time the king goes in front of the pawn, we improve this king, and slowly the king will reach here and black will take the pawn. So we can't just go for the pawn directly like that. What about we go for this pawn, king f6. Let's try king g4, king f7, and black gets the b5 pawn. Yes, so we have to start with king f5, trying to get the opposition. Hello Savlovich, welcome. And now let's say black plays king h4. We can try to maintain a position with king f4, but somewhere black will play pawn f6 and we have to lose their position. Then we go king f6. Okay, let me try. But how is it different? Okay, I see. So the difference is that now the pawn is taken on f6 instead of f7. So let's say black continues, king h3. Thank you for following, Salambo, and welcome. King f5, king g3, and now the pawn is still on f7. So black will keep the pawn on f7 and then go to the queen side to take the b5 pawn. King g5 also will be met by king g3, king f6, king f4, king f7, king e5, and black reaches first and takes the pawn there. King f3, let's say king h2. Black is just trying to go from this side, king f2, and now f6. Can we go back again. Can we go back again and take f6? Let's see. So again, a composition by Grigoriev in 1925. And they say first move is king f5, good move. So we played this. King h4, king f4, king h, not this, king h3, king f3, king h2, king f2. And now black plays f6 to give up the move. King f3, king g1. King e4, king f2. The king has blocked the way of his own pawn, so white's attack against the b6 pawn arrives in time. So now the king stands in this file, so white goes for the b pawn now and gets in time. King c6, f4, and king b6 with a draw because both sides will promote at the same time. So now if black plays here king g2 instead of king f2 to avoid this, they say it's a mistake because white can just take this pawn and in fact reach in time. Yes, this is in fact winning for white now. So that will be a mistake to go to the other side. That is why black has to play king f2 and then it blocks its own pawn and then we take the b6 pawn and make a draw like that. Interesting. Why cannot black king go up the h file? I think for the same reason that white takes the f6 pawn. Next one. And this idea was very nice that we force the black king to go on the f file, f2, and then we run to the b6 pawn. King c8, black king a6, white pawns on b6, g6, h2, black pawn on h3, and there is a rook on d2. James Plunder, thank you for the donation of $20. You're very generous today. Thank you for your support. Please do more streams like this where we can learn. Of course, Stingray. Yes, we had a big support from Badur. Thank you for that. Have a nice stream. Thanks, James Plunder. And everybody do follow James Plunder. His streams are very good. Thank you, chess is my life. Welcome. So this is white to play and a draw. So these pawns are going this side, of course. Yes, white to play and draw. This looks interesting. Two pawns are trying to promote. b2, rook b2, then g7. So if first move b7, black will first give the check and then we'll go to g2 and take the pawn. Hello Fred Spawner, welcome. If we start with rook g2, let's say, Then white plays b7. Okay, so there is suggestion g7, rook g2, b7, g8. No, sorry, what is g8? I mean b8, rook g8 check, then king moves, rook a8. And we have reached a pawn endgame, which we need to calculate if it is a draw or not. There is a rook pawn in the end, but if the king reaches on time. So the defense is that, let's say white plays g7. First, black will give check, I think. This is the defense for black. Black will give the check. And now where should we move the king? If we move the king on the d file, then black will go rook g2. First, stop this pawn. I think so. That is the line. Hello, Chess Max. If we start with first move b7, also there is rook c2 check. Rook c2 check. Just a moment. Yeah, sorry for that. Okay. Yeah, I was talking to my mother and then I forgot to unmute myself. So, as I was saying, there are some suggestions. So, we start with first move b7 or g7, but for both the lines, we need to consider rook c2 check. We need to consider rook c2 check. And black will give up the rook. We just need to get into a good pawn endgame, which is a draw. Hello, Jay. g7, rook c2 check. I think g7 should be the start, right? Because if we play b7 first move, let's say b7, black will give check. And now king can't go to d file because king takes b7 and king goes to b8, then there is rook b2. And g7, then rook b7 check and then takes the pawn. So we have to start with g7, that's what I feel. g7. And now black, if black plays rook g2, then there is b7, and this will be a draw, I think, because b7 takes, we make a queen, check, and this is a draw because the king no, we have to reach here. We have to reach here. So one moment, one moment, I was just a bit confused. So g7, rook c2 and rook g2 we need to calculate. This is what you're talking about, yes. So in that pawn endgame, where is the rook's pawn, our idea is that whenever black king takes the h2 pawn, white king should reach f2 or f1, and that is the only way to make a draw, according to a theory. So our king should reach f2 square. I think I found it. g7, rook g2, b7, rook g7, queens, rook g8 check, this takes, and now king b6. Our plan is to reach f2 square, so we can't go to c8, so we have to go to king a8, and then we just move like this. And then we play king f2, and this is going to be a draw. So what else does black have in this position? So after g7, rook c2 check, and look at this line, king b8. Now idea is g8 queen, so black has to play rook g2, b7, rook g7, and king a8. Look at this line. Wow, black can't take again because this is a stalemate. So black has to play rook g8 check, and we reach the again same line. Takes, king b6, and now we have to play again the beautiful move king a8, reaching the same line which we just saw. Looks like this is the solution. This is a composition by Gebsman in 1961, and g7 is the first move, as we said, g7. b7 is a mistake because of rook c2 and rook b2. So we found it, rook c2 check, king b8, and the same line, rook g2, b7, rook g7, king a8, and in the end white king reaches f2 and we make a draw. Nice solving. I knew this position I knew, not from the beginning, but that if we want to make a draw we have to reach f2, so we have to go king a8. Now next is called as breakthrough. So first position is a simple illustration of the idea. Yes, both time king a8 is a good move. Thank you for following. General. a5, b5. King c8 does not work because white's king does not reach f2 square. And when black plays king h2, king f3. Thank you, Jet Funk. Okay, let us analyze it to make it clear. So this was the position. Oof, I made the kings in opposite way. Thank you for following, Suraj. So in this position, if we play king c8, black will play king c6. And now where to go, here or here? King b8. And if we do the same idea, we are one move late for that. We just reached the f3 square, and after king g1, the pawn will promote. King h1, black king h3, pawns on a5, b5, c5, black pawns on a7, b7, c7. So now we are talking about breakthrough, and they say here a breakthrough occurs when one or more pawns are sacrificed in order to create a passed pawn and promote it. So this is a typical position to understand breakthrough. I think many of you know it already. Yes, this is a classic example. So kings are quite far away, so we don't have to need the help of the king. So we start with b6. We sacrifice the pawns, and now black, doesn't matter either side, he takes it. Let's say a takes b6, we play c6. Now idea is to take here, so black takes and a6. And the second line, if black takes with the c pawn, we play a6, we sacrifice 2 pawns, and then we promote this and win. Yes, looks like everybody knew this position. White king h4, pawns h3, g4, c2, c3, a2, black king g6, pawns h6, c6, c5, b5, and a5. That only needed to happen to me once, and I failed before I figured it out and never forgot. Wow, this happened in your game. Very interesting. So here they say that this is the sort of structure we find in the Roy-Lopez exchange variation. So we know the exchange variation of Roy-Lopez. White takes on c6, bishop c6 in the opening, and then black takes with the d pawn. And this is one of the endgames from Roy-Lopez exchange variation. If this position was black to play, then black wins by creating a passed pawn on the queen side by playing first move c4. So let's say if this was black to move, I will have to change it. Okay, I will just show with arrows. If black to play c4, king g3, then black plays c5, followed by b4, a4, and b3. So this is black's idea. Slowly move the pawns. So starting with c4, c5, b4, a4, and b3. So this is how black creates a passed pawn. If this position is white to play, the only move for white to defend this is to play c4. And this is the idea we have to remember, because this is a classic opening system, Roy-Lopez exchange, and many times we can get this kind of endgames where there are 4 pawns on the queen side versus 3. and they are double structure. So the only thing to remember is that we need to stop the black's pawn, and we have to do it by playing c4, because if black takes it, these pawns cannot move forward, and if after b4, then we can start playing on the king side, because a4 does not lead to any passed pawns. The comment made it easy, yes. So that's all in this position, they say. White king b2, pawns on c3, e4, f3, g3, h4, black king on g8, pawns on h7, g7, f6, e5, c4 and a4. And this is black to play. Black is having one extra pawn, but will soon lose this pawn after king a3 and king a4. So we have to try to create a passed pawn on the king side. g6. And what is the idea? Maybe f5. But is it fast enough? Let's say g6, then king a3, f5. White will not take it. White will play king b4. And still the pawns are locked. h5. White will play king a3. g5, king a4. So white's plan is clear. White wants to go take this and then attack the c4 pawn. Maybe h5, g5 and f5. Let me try h5, king a3, g5. Now white should not take, because then that creates a passed pawn. White will take g4 here. g4, then white will just take the pawn. So we need to try maybe f5. Yes, maybe we have to try f5. If g4, white takes, and then in time for this. So f5. Now white has few options. If white takes here, then we play f4 and the h pawn will be passed pawn. Thank you for the follow, Togo. If white takes this pawn, then we can play g4. If white takes, we can play g4, and then we can promote this pawn. So white can take on g4. And what else? If directly king b4, we can play f4, and this is winning. This is how we create a passed pawn on the queen side. So here they say black's position looks difficult since the enemy king rules the queen side, but the possibility of pawn breakthrough changes the game completely. First move is h5. If white plays g4 here, then we can play just g5. And then h pawn will promote anyway. If f4, then again g5. Or we can take and play g5. Yes, so white played king a3. But if g4, there is g5, they say, and black is winning. And what about f4? They have not mentioned f4. f5? Is it working? Maybe f5, let me check. Yes, f5 is just winning with the same idea. This is very beautiful. f4, then f5, g4, then g5. So white played in the game king a3, g5, king a4, and black plays f5, king b5, f4, gf4, gh, and white resigned. Thank you, HRS. Welcome. Hello. We are doing an endgame series. Next is a famous game between Capablanca and Lasker. King d3, pawns on a2, g5, h5, black king d5, pawns on a6, d4, f5, and h7. With black to play. Black is having one extra pawn. So in the game, Lasker played king e5. And they say it's a blunder because white played h6 with the idea g6 and black had to resign here. After h6, black resigned. Because if we play f4, again g6, and white will take the d4 pawn, then the f4 pawn and wins. If king e6, then just king d4. But instead, black could have defended this game and made a draw after first move king e6. So this was necessary. Instead of king e5, king e6 was necessary. King capture d4, f4, king e4, f3, king f3, king f5, g6, hg, h6, and king f6. So this was the draw that was missed by Lasker. Wow. So king e5 looks so natural in this position, but this move is losing and this move is a draw in fact. Because now we are closer to the promoting square. Yes, because after king e6, if white plays h6, we just go king f7. And that is not possible if our king is on e5. That's the difference here. Yes, pretty difficult. So next is king e3, pawns on c4, g3, h4, black king on e5, pawns f6, g6, h5. equal pawns, and this is a game position. So let's see what happened. They say, thank you, Polak, welcome. So they say the position is drawn, and the correct defense was to play king d6 for black, king d4, king c6, c5, g5, gh. One second, I missed something. So the position is drawn. First move king d6, king d4, king c6, c5, g5, king e4, gh, king c5, king f5, and king d6. And black king reaches the corner. So this was a draw, they say. But what was played in the game was g5. If f5, let me think. If f5, then white plays c5. And white will go for the pawns. But black played here g5 in the game. Hey, taking challenges? Not right now, Srinidhi. This is an endgame series, so not playing games right now. g5 was played in the game, and they say it's a big blunder because this move loses. And black loses, in fact, in just one move. Black loses in one move after white plays g4. Because now white creates two passed pawns. One is on c4, one is on h4. And the game continued few moves. Black played hg4, h5, f5, h6, f4, king f2, g3, king g2, king e4, h7, and resigned. So this is very nice line. After g5, white just plays g4. So pawn endings can be very critical like that. One move can literally change the result. Thank you for the compliment. So now we have tragic comedies. So these are games, these are positions from the games, and one of the player misses something and something funny happens. King c1, black king c4, pawns on f2, g4, f5, h5, black pawns f7, g7, h7, and c3. There is a section in this book, Dovretzky's book, about tragic comedies. So they are like tragedy and funny at the same time. Yes, we have started Dovretzky's book. So this is a game between Lasker versus Moll in 1904. And they say black wins easily if black just stops this pawn on the king side. So the correct move was to play f6. So idea is to just stop these pawns like this, and white cannot create any passed pawn after f4 g5. And just don't take anything, and then bring the king on this side and win the pawns. So the correct way was to play f6 first move. If g5 and just h6, so that's the idea. Put these pawns on f6 and h6, block them, and then bring the king and win. That was the easiest way to do it. But black starts with first move h6, and they say this is a terrible blunder. Now what happens really? Oh, because this allows f6, gf, f4, king d5, g5, fg, fg, and white wins. In fact, white wins this game. So this was winning for white after h6. Thank you for following, Rick. So one move can make a big difference. So we know that this pawns should be here, and then it's winning for black. But starting with f6 was correct. But starting with h6 is a blunder. And in the game, what happened is that black played h6 and white played f4. And after f6, g5, king d4, white resigned. So that was the tragic comedy. Hello, Rick. Welcome. Another tragic comedy we have. White king, b4, bishop, d4, pawns on a5, c3, f2, g2, h3. Black king, d3, bishop, d8, pawns on a6, g5, and h4. I have always problems in final game. It's good teach. Yes, Rick. We can all profit from studying endgames. So what is the position? White is having 2 extra pawns and having a winning position. Not so easy, but it is winning for white because there are same colored bishops. But here he made a big blunder in this game. They say it would have been better if white played something like bishop b6 and would have retained excellent winning chances for white. However, he forgot about the possibility of a pawn breakthrough and obtained opposite result instead. So in the game he played g3, deciding to exchange the pawns, and was in big trouble after black just played g4. Look at this. What can I do to improve my skill? I would suggest learn a lot of endgames and also tactics if you want to start with, and keep up with it every day. Not just begin, but continue it every day with discipline. played g4, gh, gh, bishop e5, bishop capture h4, f3, and a beautiful move, bishop f6. White cannot take because of h2, bishop h2, bishop c3 check, king a4, king e3, f4, king e4, and after some time, white lost. White resigned here. Because now, black can take this pawn also with these moves, and this is winning for black. So look at the starting position. It was 2 pawns up for white, but just one careless move like g3 changed the result entirely in the end. Yes, white lost this game in the end. Thank you for following, Grayson. So next we have another game position. So clear board, white king on f3, pawns on h2, f2, e4, d5, b4, a4, king on h5, pawns on h4, g6, e5, c7, b7, b6. Black to. Great analysis. Thank you, Rayson, and welcome. So this is game between Wade and Korchnoi, 1960. And in the game, black played king g5, which they say is a blunder. Korchnoi ignored the possible pawn break on the queen side. White played b5, and there is going to be some pawn break on this side. King h5, because if king goes to f6, white will go to g4 and start taking the pawns on the king side. King h5, a5. Now idea is a6, b5, b6, cb6, and d6. And this is how white won this endgame in just few pawn breaks. So what was the correct way? So correct way was to play pawn to b5 here. This was the right move. And only way to defend this position for black. A capture b5 and b6. So this stops all the pawns on the queen side. And we have a draw here. If black push pawn on g5, that is possible. But first we need to stop these pawns on the queen side. He will play, I think, h3 to stop g4. And then again the same situation. And when the king moves, the king will go to g4 and take control of the squares. Maybe play f3 next, then king goes to f5 or h5. So we have to watch out for pawn breaks like that. And this is how white won this game. So next one. King e6, black king h8, pawns on g3, h3, and black pawn h6, g6. White to play and win. Yes, these endgames can be quite complicated. Even one move changes everything. They look so simple yet so tricky. Now, what is the difference between these two moves? King f7 or king f6? Black will play king h7. King f7, then king h7. So we need to find the difference between king f7 and king f6. There has to be some difference which I don't see yet so far. There must be black has some defense. Thank you for the follow. Welcome. Okay, so black has to play king h6, then let's say we play g4. Thank you, Cupcake Master. King f6, king h7, king f7, pawns are lost. Black has some defense, so let's play one move. Let's go for king f6 first. King h7, king f7. Now I will play g5. Thank you, Ravindra, for following. Then we play g4, black plays h5. And this is how he defends the pawns. And now takes, then black plays king h6. Hello, Blasting King. So, what if we start with first move king f7, again king h7, g4, then g5. And maybe now we play king f6, so that h5 we can take. But still, black can take and play king g7. Such a vibe of a serious Indian math teacher. I'm just confused in this position, that is why. So now we know the defense for black, that is to play king h7, g5 and h5. Oh, I think I found it. Let's see. King f7 first move, king h7 only move, g4 again. If h5, then we have g5, h4, then king f6. So this is winning. So black has to play g5. No, this does not work. I want to play like h5 and h4. So our king has to be on f7 that time. So we have to start with king f6, I guess. King f6, king h7, king f7, g5, g4, h5, and h4 we play. So that we promote this pawn on the g file. That is why our king has to be on f7. Now if takes, then we take g3, g6 check, and then we promote first. If black takes here, then again the same idea. Looks like that. Let me check. Yes, first move, king f6 is right. King f6 is right. Because king f7 leads to only a draw. King f7, king h7, g4, g5, king f6, and h5. And now we can't play h4 because this square is not controlled like before. That is why king f7 is the winning move. King f6, I mean. King h7, g4, g5, and h4. Black plays king h6 and king f6 wins. Wow, this was nice. Thank you for following, Manan. Hello, Kidnan. This was very nice position. Hello, Ritvik, welcome. I'm not playing right now. So don't send me challenges right now. We will do separate streaming for playing, but it's not now. Okay, so next. Thank you, John Twitch. Welcome. Nice to see you. King f1. Pawns on g3, f4, h5. Black king on h1. Pawns on g7 and f5. And this is a white to play and win. Source of these puzzles? It is from Dovretzky's Endgame book. Of course, you must be all familiar with this book, Dovretzky. g4 then takes. Black will just take the pawn. And then g3, g2. Black will win, in fact. I guess. First move, king f2. Black plays king h2. Or even after g4, king f2, then king h2. We can create a passed pawn, but black is much faster when he takes on g4. At 6, then black will take it. Then g4 maybe. But still black is faster. Thank you, clever boy. King e2. Now black has opposition. King e2, then black has two ways to go. King h2 or king g2. Trying to take this pawn. You have a good idea, clever boy. So he suggests king e2. And if black plays here king g2, now the king is on this way of the pawn. I mean this pawn, way of this pawn. Now we can play g4, takes, f5, and maybe we can be faster this time. Maybe this pawn takes at 6, at 7, and we promote with a check. So this can be the idea. What if black plays king h2? I think we have to take their position this time. King f2. If king h1, then we can play g4 and king g3. If king h3 again, king f3, and next move g4. Well done. Can we play also king e1? Is there like two ways to go for this with the same idea? But this looks like a solution for me. Let's check. King e1. They have given king e1 double exclamation mark. But I think king e2 with the same idea is also right. Let me try. King e2, and I will start this stockfish. King g2, g4, and it says here it is 0.00 because now the king stands on check by the f3 pawn, and next move f3, and it is going to be a draw. At least this is what stockfish says us. If we start with king e1, the difference is that there is no check after that move. King g2, and now the same line, f5, g3, f6 takes, at 6, and the difference is now there is no check after f3, and if f3, we can just play queen a8 and loses this pawn. Wow, this was a very nice trick. Yes, nice idea, clever boy. But even one move can make a big difference in the end. So king e1 is the correct move, and we have solved it. We have one tragic comedy next. you have done this but don't remember. I see. King on h6, rook on f5, pawns on g2, h4, black king f7, rook b8, pawn on a6 and f6. So this is a game between Nimzowitsch and Tarash in 1911. And in the game, White played king h5. And he lost this game. Let's see what happened in this game. Black played rook b5. So had to calculate this endgame after rook b5. White had thought he would play king g4, rook f5, king f5. And he thought that he is in the square of this pawn. Thank you for the compliment. Okay, see you next time. Have a good day to you. And he thought that he is in the square of this pawn. a5, he played king a4, king e4 I mean. And now he missed the move f5, check. But what happens after that? He cannot take because of a4, king d4, f4, king c4, king g6. And he lost the pawns on the king side and lost the game. So in the starting position, they say White can just draw by keeping the rooks on the board. And now rook h8 is made, so he had to play king h7. And they say that this rook endgame is a draw. Okay, let's not analyze this rook endgame now. Thank you. I disagree. f5 stop g4 for white. Yes, yes. This is what Nimzowitsch missed in the game against Tarash. Just a moment, somebody is on my door. Okay, I'm back. I am back. Yeah, I forget every time. So the next chapter is called as Two Rooks, Pawns with an Extra Pawn on the Opposite Wing. It has such a big name, yet such a simple looking positions. Thank you, James Blunder. Wow, you give a donation of $40. That is so generous. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for following, guys. And big shout out to James Blunder, Badur Jabava, Super Grandmaster from Georgia. Go, 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 go. Okay, just a moment. Let me find the positions. King f4, Black King f6, pawns on f3. Oops. a2 and Black pawn a3. White to play. And they ask if it is winning for white. Thank you for following Sub-Zero. Yes, this is white to play and win, so we need to find it. Mortal Kombat. So now we need to think if we should start going to the a3 pawn directly, or first we should push the f pawn and then go to a3. Thank you for following chess. Chess so hard. Okay, so shall we go to a3 pawn directly, or we should first push the f4 pawn? That is what we are going to see in this position. King e4, king e6. Hi, Mr. Chess Manager. Push the pawn. But if we push it too far, it will be good for black. Thank you, word 20. King e4 and king d4 and push f pawn. King e4, black plays king e6. Now we should go for the pawn directly or first push the f pawn. King d4, let's go for the a pawn. So black has to take this. We have to stop the king from going to the corner. And this would be winning for white because now king d7, king b7, king c, king a4, and then this wins. So they say that we have to go directly for the pawn and we should not push this pawn on f3. The further it is, the better it is for us. If we start this game with king e3, they say it's a mistake because black plays king f5. And now what happens? And black reaches the corner and makes a draw. So that is why we have to start with king e4 and then go for the pawn, so that we stop the king to go to f5. We have to prevent these tempos and then take the pawn. If we push the pawn, it is better for black. That is why keep the pawn further away and take shouldering, it's called. Stop the king and then go for the pawn. You lack a tempo this way, yes. Next one, king h4, black king f4, pawns on h3, a4, and black pawn on a5 with black to play. And let's see the analysis here. They have given the analysis so that we understand what is going on. It's not just to solve. So black plays king f5, king h5. King g3 will lead to a draw. So let's see king g3, why it will be a draw. And we reach the king c8 square. And now we will go to king b8 and king a7. This will be a draw. So that is why in the starting position after king f5, white tries to play king h5, king f4, h4, king f5, king h6, king f6, king h7, king f7, h5, king f6, and this is how black makes a draw here. Alright, I think today I will stop here for this endgame series. Maybe after some time I will play only chess, play some tournament, or at night I will stream something else. But it's enough about endgames for now. Please start a series on middle games. Okay, I will think about it. We can do that also. We have to study everything: endgame, openings, middle game. Thank you for the follow. But these are very instructive positions from this book, and so much to learn from them. So we are almost on page 50. Wow. We started just 3 days and we are doing good. But now I need break, and after some time I will stream some more, or maybe tonight. I'm thinking maybe play some tournament on Chess. So I will look what are the good tournaments and then I will play there. But thank you for joining, everybody. It is fun to have you all and to study with you. How many pages total? Total is around 400 pages. But it's about different endgame. Pawn Endgames is just first chapter of this book. So it's gonna be a long journey. But I hope that we can finish this book someday. So that is my goal right now. Yes, I will continue with this series also tomorrow. And we will finish pawn and game soon. So next will be knight versus pawns and bishop versus pawns. So I think tomorrow we will finish this pawn, just pawn and games. And then we can go on to the next chapter. We can finish this book first before starting a new one. Of course, stay with me so that we can do this together. We can kill all the books. We can try to kill all the books. Thank you for following and appreciate your support very much. So I will stop here and let's make a raid before we finish this. Let me check who are streaming. Thank you, Chess E for E5. Okay, let's rate Grandmaster Nixon's. Not many are streaming right now, I think. Alright, so see you tomorrow or tonight maybe. And hope you had a great day.